Switched On IT is proudly brought to you by Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West and Oz Hosting, Cloud Made Easy.
Welcome to Switched On IT. I'm Barry. This is the show where we talk about everything IT. Today we have our experts with us, Ray Sidney Smith from Washington DC and Doug Endersby from Oz Hosting in Sydney. They are today going to talk about, at the end of the coronavirus, when things are getting back to normal and businesses are beginning to get back to doing what they do, many places still don't have effective websites. So today, Doug and Ray are going to talk to us about how to build an effective website. And one of the things out of the coronavirus that's really interesting is the increase in businesses having to do business online. Both just having a website where people can see, so they've got a presence where people can see what's happening with their business and able to contact them, and also the increase in sales online. And this could be something that will be around for a long time yet. So having an effective website and a place where you can sell and take payments is really important. Now, this is the subject that Doug and Ray are going to tackle today. They're with us now. So, Ray, tell us, what do businesses need to do to ensure that they have a website presence that is going to be effective?
Well, I think what Doug and I are going to be doing today is talking about really the major steps in the process of being able to get an effective website live. And what I've just found over the years of working with businesses and launching websites is that most websites suck. I can't put it any more bluntly than that, but they are just usually terrible. And it's terrible for a whole wide variety of reasons. One is that the websites are really beautiful, but they're not functional. That is, that they don't actually drive sales and they don't understand how to market the business through the website. And the other end of it is that the websites suck because they look poorly designed. They're just kind of, patchworked together. And then while they may be functional, they actually don't serve the purpose of being aesthetically pleasing enough that people actually take them serious and allow for sales to help the business prosper. So starting off, Doug, I wanted to just sort of talk about website goals. What do people talk about with you when they come to Oz Hosting about the notion of establishing goals for the site? Do they actually really come to you and talk about what those things are? Who do those discussions really start with when it comes to developing a website?
Look, I think a lot of the time, by the time small businesses come to us, they've decided that they need a website, and they're somewhat down the path of formulating their goals for the website. But very often, it's all about the business having a bit more credibility. So very often, it could be a small business. It might be in construction or in food, hospitality, a restaurant or whatever. And they probably have a pre-existing customer base, a well-established customer base. And what I'm hearing typically is that they wanted to have a website because they just felt that it enhanced their credibility as a business, that provided an opportunity for existing customers and potential customers to go online, maybe to see a little bit more about what the business does, how it's able to provide a service to the user. And I think very often it's just a matter of pride, and they feel as though we need to be able to demonstrate to our various stakeholders that we're a serious business. But I think in terms of the core functionality of the site and navigation and tools and specialist information that it's got in it, that's probably more the conversation that they have with the developer. But I think one of the things that I did want to ask you about, Ray, was I guess one of the first steps is securing a domain name for their website, because that's, I think, sometimes a little bit of a shock as to what is and is not available to business owners when they start to go down that path. What's your experience with securing domain names, and what advice have you got for businesses in that respect?
Yeah, so I mean, let's start off with the fact that the reason I asked you whether people come and talk to you about website goals is that they usually don't. You know, they're by the time they go to your web host, you have hopefully worked through all of those things, and you've gotten yourself to some goals. So I really believe that, you know, things like choosing a domain name is all stuff that needs to be done in a much earlier stage, and preparatory work needs to be done. But registering a domain name is a very different process than choosing a good domain. And we could have an entire discussion about choosing domain names. I could literally spend hours talking about just the process of choosing domain names. But what I do tell people is that it should be brand enabled. That means that you should have a business focused or brand focused domain name, and choosing that domain name is really important, because as you're alluding to, Doug, a lot of domains are no longer available because they've been taken up over time. A lot of domains are now not available. You just can't get yourbusinessname.com because that may be taken by another entity. And if that's the case, then you then have to choose another, what's called a CCTLD, or a top level domain, either by country code, or a GTLD, which is a general top level domain. And so we have lots and lots of these top level domains. So you can find a domain, but that is a process that needs to be done. But that really comes down to the goal of the website. I really have to impress upon people that if you're going to launch a website, start with figuring out what the website's goals are. And from that, you will determine what the appropriate domain name is, what the appropriate functions of the website are going to be. But we really have to start there. If your website is not designed to sell, then what's the purpose of creating the website in the first place? The whole point of having a business website is that it should do some part of the sales process for you. It should be a part of the sales process. It shouldn't just be a brochure that is sitting on the web. And so often than not, we don't recognize that today we need to have a retail experience that is translated into a digital environment, and that is your website. And more stark than ever is now during this COVID-19 pandemic that we see people who didn't have that infrastructure in place wish that they had. And so I hope this rushes in or ushers in a new era of understanding that you must have a retail experience designed around your website. You just can't slap up anything and presume that it's going to work for you. You have to think through the goals. What are the goals of the website? Have you done buyer personas? Have you done buyer journeys to understand where your customers go along the path to purchase? And then from there, establish what the goals of the website are going to be so that you can match it up with what you know is existing for your potential customers, your current customers, and your past customers, because you want to be able to help all three of those audiences effectively on your website.
Yep, absolutely. So having sort of come through and said, all right, well, we know what the purpose of our website is going to be, as they go down the path selecting domains. I mean, you're alluding to the fact that there's all sorts of different TLDs, as they call them. You can have a .com, a .com.au, a .co.uk, a .co.nz, and so on and so forth. Even within Australia, you've got the .com.au's, the .net.au's. You can even have a .org.au if you qualify for that particular TLD. Should they buy up all the different TLDs that their business name might fit into, or what's your recommendation in that respect?
I think that has to do with the particular area where you are. I don't know Australian law, but here in the United States, we have particular laws that protect or don't protect people from impersonating others. That also includes impersonating other businesses or trying to do harm to those businesses by registering those names. So really, that's a probably more of a legal question than a marketing question. From my perspective, if you want to do some what I call brand protection, then you do actually want to register all of the common domains that someone would just generally type into the browser in order to find you. I also think that you should probably register common misspellings so that if you know that you have a domain like thebusinessname.com and you recognize that a lot of people type in TEH as opposed to THE in thebusinessname.com, then you would register that domain and redirect it to the correct business name so that you don't lose traffic to someone who would otherwise try to be visiting your website, but they just typed it in wrong. So if you do have common misspellings, then registering a domain that is the common misspelling and redirects to yours to the correct spelling is also a way that you can do it. So that's really a brand protection mechanism. Now, the reality is that if I'm just a jerk and I'm not actually trying to misrepresent and be you here in the United States, at least, I can register a domain that is whatever, RaySydneySmithSucks.com. I can register that domain, and I'm legally capable of doing it, and I can put up a website that says, Ray Sidney Smith sucks, and these are the reasons why I think that's the case. There's actually a very famous Supreme Court case called Taubman Sucks, and it's based on a mall and a gentleman who decided to register that domain, taubmansucks.com, the name of the mall, and was upheld. And so the Supreme Court said, at least here in the United States, that he could register that domain, and it was under free speech protections for him to be able to do so. So take it for what you will. From my perspective, I would register the domains that I think are commonly associated with me and those that are common misspellings. I just don't feel a sense that I need to register domains that are, RaySydneySmithSucks.com or my business name, sucks.com, those kinds of things to protect myself, because I don't plan on being a jerk to my customers. I don't plan on being doing those things. But, some people may be in an industry where you have more of those things. And I have actually guided clients to register those domains because they happen to be in an industry where they do need that type of protection. Think lawyers, therapists, for example, especially in, when people are dealing with mental and emotional health. Sometimes those folks who have challenges in that regard will go ahead and do some really aggressive and mean-spirited things toward businesses. So you may decide to register those kinds of things so that you can protect yourself.
Ray, just in terms of that, I have two different domains registered. One is PTV Channel O, which is an O.com, and I also have PTV Channel 0, so the number 0, so that if somebody puts in a 0 instead of an O, they still get to my site. Some people say to me, is it an O or a 0? And I say to them, it doesn't matter, you can put either one in, it'll get there. The other thing, Doug, you might want to speak to this, is that in Australia, if you're going to register a .au, you can't actually do that unless you have an ABN and your website domain has to reflect the company. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's got to be, first of all, you've got to have some sort of a business number, and then you have to actually agree that the domain name that you're registering either is or is substantially associated with your line of business, and that is to stop people cherry picking, well-known business names and creating a domain name out of them, and then kind of holding that to ransom for the owner of that brand name, for instance. So yeah, in Australia, it's quite tightly controlled. It's quite difficult to essentially go and try and steal someone's brand name and resell it to them at a massive profit. You're probably going to find that you don't have the rights to even hold on to that domain name if it's challenged. I certainly do agree with the concept of sort of road blocking your business name into multiple different domain names using different TLDs. That certainly makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I'd suggest to people is they should buy a registration period that is as long as they can afford and are comfortable with. I think if it's your own business name and you're going to be running that .com or that .com.au domain name with your website for the next 5 or 10 years, I'd say just buy a domain name for 5 or 10 years. Don't panic every year when the renewal comes in and you're scared that that it's going to lapse and somebody else might pick it up and that sort of thing. It's a pretty trivial cost in the grand scheme of things to buy the domain for 5 years or even 10 years if they offer that.
Yeah, and keep the auto renewal turned on because it's so important to I mean, I see the folks who will turn off auto renewal on their domain registration for some reason, and just keep your auto renewal on. It's just going to save you a lot of headache down the path. It's just if you want the domain, then register it for a good length of time. Keep on your auto renewals and just put the date in your calendar. I mean, it literally will give you the date of its expiration. Give yourself a month in advance of the expiration, toss it into your calendar in the future, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And that way, you get a little bit of a notification before the domain comes up so that you don't have the hair on fire moment. You don't know the number of times I get the emails or the phone calls of people who come back to me and say, hey, where's our website? I don't understand why our website went down. And this is 3, 4, 5 years later from when I first talked to them about their website. And it's because they didn't turn on auto renewal. They didn't know. Maybe they changed email addresses. They started it off and they used their Yahoo or Gmail account. And then they set up their email with their primary business domain, and they've been receiving emails at their new domain. They stopped using their personal account for that email, so it goes into spam or gets filtered out of their inbox, and so they don't get the notifications, and then the domain expires. And then maybe someone had a back order on that domain, and so they then register their domain as soon as that domain becomes available, and they lose access to the domain. Don't have that happen to you. Really just set in the appropriate parameters for it. It's not like your U.S. Postal Service address or Australian Postal Service address. You have to keep that registration alive in order for that address to keep getting directed to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door and will get your problem solved in no time with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters Toowoomba West on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Looking for exposure for your next event or function? Take your next community event, training seminar, sports event, official opening, function, concert or exhibition live to the world with PTV Channel O and Power FM's unique live simulcast. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation for a fraction of what you would expect to pay. No matter what the event, PTV Channel O and Power FM can take your message to our audience. Invite the world to your party by phoning 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com.
Morning, good morning, love to see the sunrise. Crazy Kevin on the radio. Power FM.
powerfmradio.com.au.
What I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about the functions of making sure that the site you're going to launch is done in the right order. And so, again, from the very get-go, you're not talking to your web host first. You're talking to whoever you're working with in terms of, or yourself. I mean, if you're building the site yourself and you're doing a DIY, you at the very least need to figure out your goals of the website, buyer personas, and buyer journeys, right? So that's that main piece. The second kind of stage is kind of what Doug is talking about in terms of wireframing. What we really want to be able to do is to understand the kind of table of contents of the site. I actually, when we talk to clients about developing websites, I frequently talk, I deal in the strategy space, and many times I'm project managing a website's development, and I
Like
will
mine.
not have. What's that?
Like mine.
Yes, there you go. And so one of the most important things that I want people to understand is that they need to put their content together before we start discussing web hosting and how they're going to develop the website and all those other pieces. What we really want to functionally figure out is what's the table of contents look like for the site. And usually that means taking our buyer journeys that we developed. And if you don't know what a buyer journey is, that's really easy. You can look up customer journey or buyer journey, and you can find these maps, in essence, these visual maps of where customers go on the pathway to purchasing from you. And there are usually several different journeys that people can take, and certain buyer personas take certain journeys. And we want to be able to have the well-worn paths covered. And your website is usually a critical part of that, is that someone's going to come across your website at some point in that. So one way that we do that is just create a table of contents, just like you would a book, and you're going to outline what the website pages are going to look like and how people are going to navigate that website. From there, you're going to maybe create a PowerPoint presentation or use Google Slides or a wireframing tool. These are specific tools that help you build a website visually so that you can hand that off to a designer or a developer who can then go ahead and build the website from that wireframe. But you can kind of see it in a less sophisticated but more visual way. I like to use Google Slides and just create a presentation, and for each buyer journey, build out the components of the website using slides, because you could just literally put a button here, you can go ahead and put a photo here, put some text, and you can lay out the whole buyer journey in pages on the website in very, very easy fashion in the Google Slides presentations. And from there, then, you might have duplications of particular pages, and you should, right? Because you're going to have different pages. And so each buyer journey is going to be built out, but they will be replicated from potentially other pages from other slides. So you could just import slides from the other pages, have those all built out, and then when you're done, you now have several slide decks that you then can provide to your developer or designer and pass that off. If you're going to work with the designer, maybe you work with the designer with the designer to create the slides together. So you've collaboratively done that, and then you can hand it off to the developer if they're a separate person or entity who's then going to be able to turn that slide deck into the actual pages of your website. But by doing that infrastructure work, you're actually building, again, like I said at the top, that retail experience that then gives you an opportunity for your past, present, and future customers to have a retail experience that's just smooth, that's easy, and that's actually selling them on something, as opposed to just providing them with a brochure that really doesn't do anything for them, right? It's not engaging them in the process of taking them from understanding who you are to understanding what you provide in terms of products or services. So, Doug, do you ever see folks deal with kind of the hiccup of choosing what type of hosting based on the site that they're going to be developing?
Yes, they generally need to make a decision between are they going to have their website on a shared hosting service, or are they going to have it on a virtual private server? the arguments for a shared hosting platform is obviously it's very inexpensive. You don't have the responsibility of managing the server. Servers need care and feeding, and it's a job, a task all of itself to maintain that. And if they've got something fairly simple, if it's sort of a brochureware type of website that's going to be fairly rather basic, then they can probably get away with having a shared hosting environment. If they have something a little bit more complicated, or they might have several websites, that's not uncommon at all, then a virtual private server starts to make sense for them. And then that can come with some tools that will actually make their life considerably simpler, because when you've got a website, you've probably got a content management system. WordPress is a very popular one. And what a lot of people quickly realise when they've got a WordPress website is that WordPress are continually releasing security patches and updates for their content management system. If you've used a theme, the developer of the theme needs to make sure that their theme remains compatible with the latest security patches and updates that WordPress have released. Otherwise, you can't implement the security patches, and your site's going to get hacked. So the theme developer has got to keep his theme up to date, and then there might be a whole bunch of plugins that you use in online forms and all sorts of different plugins, and all of those plugins need to be kept up to date. And if you've got a good virtual private server and some good hosting tools inside that virtual private server, and what I'm thinking of is a WordPress toolkit, for instance, then you can vastly simplify the task of making sure that your WordPress instance is up to date, the theme or themes are up to date, and all your plugins are up to date. Otherwise, it can be quite an arduous task to keep on top of all that in a shared hosting environment, where essentially your hoster is just hosting an application that you've put in there, but everything that changes in that application is your responsibility. And I think a lot of small businesses don't realise that. They think that they can just put the website up there and they don't have to do anything for it for the next 6 months. And if it goes down, then they come looking at the hoster and saying, well, what did you do? Because I haven't made any changes. And they don't realise the fact that they haven't made any changes is in actual fact the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I've really, over the years, just pushed more and more people to managed WordPress hosting for those simple websites where people are going to be able to just kind of, once they've set it up, the hosting provider is in the background handling some of those administrative functions for the WordPress installation, so that they don't have to really do a lot of those things. But once you get a larger website that's going to be, we're going to require a much more competent server environment. If you're in a virtual private server environment, a VPS environment, or dedicated hosting environment, you do have to start understanding what these things are, or having and making sure that your support with your web host is providing that level of support for making sure things are updated, making sure that you're keeping the site maintained. But I have this rule, which is that if you're going to develop a website as a small business owner, then your website should be a website that you want to visit every day if you were your customer. And if you don't want to visit it every day as your customer, then why should your real customers, right? So think about it from that perspective. What's going to make your website so useful, so interesting that your customers would want to come to it every day? And that's the standard you should set for your website. And if you can do that, then your website's going to be something that's valuable, that's useful to people, and that's going to be well trafficked, which means that you're going to be making money from the site such that it will be worthwhile having someone maintain that site. That is, that you can take that off your shoulders specifically and put that on somebody else's within the organization or with your web hosting provider, so that you can focus on providing great service, great product, and great customer service to those customers. So really think about what is the purpose of the website, so that you can really make a website that is of high value to people and makes them want to come back to it day in and day out. And that's the standard that I really want everyone to really walk away with. And so, yeah, say you can't make one that someone wants to visit Every day, fine. How about every week? Like lower the standard just a little bit, and it still becomes a fairly high bar. It becomes a high standard of creating value that someone wants to come and visit every week. And that could be a really valuable blog post. It could be a really valuable podcast episode. It could be a really valuable webinar that you're doing once a month and putting onto your website. What I mean by that is setting a standard such that you're driving traffic to your website and people want to be there. People should want to visit your website for some reason, and that's going to get them through that initial part of the funnel, right? That's the lead generation part of it. Then you need to have lead capture, and then you need to be able to have sales. So you need to bring them through those stages of growth so that you can actually make your website effectively capture sales and create sales for the business. If not, then all you have is a cost without it being a revenue generator. And I really don't like the idea of you having a website that's just going to be non-functional for the business. It's just going to be dead weight. So if you're going to launch a website and you're going to put all this energy into it, make sure that it's a website that's going to work for the business.
Yeah, very more. And I think in this planning process, it's very important that the business owner maps out each and every page of the website with every button, with every image, and you don't have to have the final images. You just have to have a placeholder of, insert image of XYZ here. But to map all that out using either wireframing tools or PowerPoint tools or Google Slides, as Ray was referring to as well, all of those make it so much easier for the web developer to understand exactly what it is that they're creating. And that will actually cut costs for the business owner. The web developer is going to be able to give you a very firm quote because they know exactly the number of pages, the number of, the buttons, the navigation. There is none of that toing and froing and sort of building it and designing it on the run, which just chews up an enormous amount of time when that particular process is done in that way. So, to the extent that a business owner can map out their website using some of these tools beforehand, it's going to get done faster. It's going to get done a lot less expensively, and they're going to get exactly what they want in that particular circumstance. Having done the wireframing piece of it, what are the other things that we need to consider with all this? Let's say somebody's got the wireframing done. From a hosting standpoint, there are, I alluded to having a shared hosting or a virtual private server. There is another type of hosting service that people can use, and that is to use an all-in-one hosting service, which is something such as Squarespace or Wix, where you don't use a content management system, you're not using WordPress. The hosting company themselves are providing both the design tools and the hosting service. Ray, what's your view on that third type of hosting arrangement?
Yeah, so I'm frequently recommending all different kinds of services like that to clients when there is a really specific need. Many times, if the business owners, if you're just technical, abilities are very, very low, and you really just can't, figure out how to use WordPress. That's totally understandable. That doesn't necessarily mean that just because you don't have the technical competence to be able to use WordPress, you shouldn't learn. Because if I tell you that you're not going to be able to use Wix for the type of site that you need to build to make your business successful, then no matter how much you believe you can force Wix to bend to your whim, it's just not going to ultimately serve you well, and you're going to need to move to WordPress at some point in the future. And that's for any tool. I mean, from Wix to Squarespace, Squarespace to Weebly, Weebly to WordPress. It doesn't matter what the direction is. What I usually try to do with a client is understand where their business is going to end up 3, 5, 7 years from now, and have them decide the platform they're going to be on today. Because it's actually, while people always think it's really easy to move from a website from one place to the other, it's actually rather difficult, and it's enough inertia that you will hold the business back by just not putting it on the infrastructure place that it belongs in the first place. So I usually like to think a little bit further out than the business usually does, the business owner does, in terms of where they're going to be, what they're going to need that website to do functionally, and then say, okay, if you're planning on 10 years from now, still just having a front end that walks people through a very easy funnel, and ultimately they've got a couple of contact forms, maybe you have a blog, maybe you're doing a little bit of video on the site. Yeah, sure, a Squarespace, a Wix, a Weebly type site will probably satisfy what you're looking for. When I start asking more probing questions for most business owners, rarely is that going to ultimately be where they end up. And so moving to a more full-fledged web hosting environment with something that can satisfy what they're looking for in terms of e-commerce or just additional functionality. If you're trying to build a membership platform, or if you're going to launch digital courses in the future, or if you're going to sell products on your website, sure, Squarespace or Wix may be able to do some of those things, but they're likely not going to have the flexibility required of you. So those are really, really simple websites. And by simple, I mean simple functionality. They can be really beautiful. And again, as I said at the top, you can have a really beautiful website, but if it doesn't functionally do what the business needs to do, then from a strategic perspective, it's as good as useless. And that's the part that I really tend to struggle with people on, is that they want everything to be easy when it comes to developing the site, when in reality, what they should really be thinking about is how competent is the website at selling what I need to sell and providing the functionality for doing so. And if the site can't do that, if the site can't do push notifications and it can't be able to show a pop-up for various types of sales, those are functionalities that you just can't make Squarespace, you can't make Wix put those things in if they don't have it built into it in the first place. And they do to some extent have those features. But the point is that if there's a function or a feature that one of them doesn't have, you can't make them add it. That they're serving thousands and thousands of websites, and they're only going to put functionality they want to put into their platform. So having your own website where you're controlling the software is where I tend to fall with a lot of the people who are really serious about making their websites be a functional part of their business. If you just really want, as you said earlier, Doug, a brochure website, you want to have a shared, even shared hosting with a WordPress installation, that's pretty simple. But if you're gonna have a full-fledged website that's going to be a part of your business and is actually going to help drive sales, both from a lead generation perspective, but also lead capture and sales conversion, hands down, most of the time, you're going to need an effective website that can do all of those functions and features for your industry and for your business. And it's just it ends up being it's kind of like, it depends is always my answer, because I have to walk people through. Okay, well, how do you sell your business to this particular buyer? And what do they do along that buyer journey? And what are the features that we need it to be able to do? Will this particular platform be able to do it? We just don't know. So we've got to do a lot of that heavy lifting up front in terms of planning and structuring the sales features, and then deciding the tool at the back end.
Yeah, and as a hosting business, we've certainly had plenty of conversations with business owners that have built their site in the early days when they thought it was going to be very simple, and they didn't anticipate even minor complexities in their requirements for their website, and they've got it on one of these pre-built platforms. When they come to us and say, now we'd like to migrate it from where it is into your hosting system and we want to use WordPress, it comes as a little bit of a shock to realize that there is no site to migrate. It's built into the hosting platform that they're on. And it's a little bit like the analogy that we use is, it's not like we're going to pick up your house and move it and put it onto our piece of land. They're going to give you all the bricks back, and you can then take them across to our place and rebuild your website, because you're just going to get the image files and the text files back again, and you've got to start from scratch. And I think for a lot of people that's a big shock when they realise they've run out of road with their current sort of integrated hosting platform, and they need to go to something that's a little bit more flexible, such as a WordPress hosting environment.
Yeah, thank goodness, some of the platforms like Squarespace and otherwise have now provided an XML file that can be exported to WordPress. And so I actually do find myself recommending Squarespace more frequently to business owners who maybe they're just not yet ready to build out, a larger site with greater functionality. So they may start, the first year or two on Squarespace and they can do it. And that's useful for them. And then they can export from Squarespace to WordPress. But not many of them are like Squarespace. So you then end up in the situation you're talking about, Doug, where a site owner now has to like copy and paste all the pages of their website into a Word document and send it off to their designer or developer to then redevelop in the new platform because the site just doesn't have an effective export functionality that gives any level of flexibility there. And that's just time wasted. I would rather you set it up in a WordPress installation today with very limited modifications and it being a very simple design and layout. And that way, when you're ready to go big and you're ready to hire a developer and really build out the site the way you need it to, all of your content's sitting in the WordPress database. All your content's ready and set for you to go. That's the beauty of something like WordPress or Drupal or Joomla or any of those other open source content management systems, is that you own the data in that database and you're capable of flexibly adapting that data as you need to. And usually, the other part of that is, if you need to find someone who can help you, there's I can walk out to my corner of the street right now and say, hey, I need a WordPress developer. And I'm sure that somebody would yell out the window, hey, I'm a WordPress developer. And that's just because of the popularity of the system, right? We have, in the case of WordPress, and I know that I happen to be a bit of a WordPress hound. I like WordPress more than I like other platforms. But the reason for that is that, a third of the world's websites run on WordPress, which means that when I need to get work done for my WordPress website, I know somebody who can work on it. I'm never going to be at a loss for finding a WordPress designer, developer, a plugin developer who can help me in a pinch if my site needs work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, look, I think that's a pretty good roundup of what a small business should do when they say, hey, we need to get serious and have a serious, proper website to support our marketing ambitions for the business. So I don't know. I haven't got any more questions for you, Ray. Barry, have you got any questions for us?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty well covers the issues. I know that Weebly seems to be a fairly popular platform to build on here in Australia anyway, as far as I can tell. However, I had a Weebly site at one stage, but I ran into the same problems that you've been alluding to, Ray, with Weebly, that there were things I wanted to do with it that it just would not do. So I transferred, and the sort of things that we now do with this site, just impossible on Weebly. So we transferred to a WordPress site, and I've been very happy with the way that works and the flexibility of it. And I think one of the things that businesses maybe don't take into consideration when they start building a website is that businesses are not static. They grow, they develop, they come across new things and new ideas, and your website has actually got to grow with your business, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And and one of the things that I frequently find is that people say, oh, well, I want my site to be pretty. I want it to be well designed, and I can't make it do that with WordPress easily. And the reality is that that's there's an argument on either side of that. I think WordPress has come a long way. We're now currently in WordPress 5.4 and version 5.4, and WordPress is bringing all these new tools to basically make a WordPress installation, both on the back end and front end, look the same. So when you're working on a page or a post, the back-end view looks more like the front-end view, and they're going to be bringing those tools to the theme. So now that when you're working on the theme structure of your website, you'll be able to have more fluidity there. But that's like fine. The argument being that a WordPress website's a little bit more complicated. But the trade-off is that when you go to update a website in Squarespace or Wix, the amount of work that's required to be able to get into one of those sites to make modifications, like to a page, seems sometimes ridiculous to me. Whereas with WordPress, you go to your login page, you open it up, you click on pages, click edit, and you're in the page. Like it's, I could do it from my mobile tablet with the WordPress application. I could do it on my mobile phone. I was actually on a cruise earlier this year before the whole pandemic crisis happened, and that I was on a cruise ship, and I needed to make an update to a client's website. I logged into the WordPress app on my mobile phone while we were docked at Bay. I logged into the website, clicked pages, clicked edit on the page. I was able to edit the client's website on my mobile phone in the WordPress application in the middle of the Caribbean islands, right? And I didn't have a hiccup because I was aware of how to work in WordPress, and it's just easy. I don't think I would have had the same experience trying to load, on the mobile device for other types of online platforms like that. They're just not designed for being able to be used on a mobile device like that. But WordPress has really done a great job of giving you that flexibility. So, when you're using a website every day, you want a tool that you can use that's going to be useful to you in that easy fashion every day. And that's where WordPress really excels. So there's a trade-off. Yes, there's a little bit more work on the front end to make it get set up and maintained well and so on and so forth. But on the back end, you get all of the productivity benefits. And I'm a productivity hound. I mean, I care about getting things done. And so I want to make sure that on the back end, I'm going to get the fluidity and the smoothness of being able to get my work done. And that's where WordPress really shines.
Terrific. All right. Now, thank you, Doug and Ray, for your time today. We will wrap this up now, and we'll see you both again next week. In the meantime, stay safe and stay isolated.
Thanks, Barry.
Well, that's been a key session today, talking about how to develop a website. And as I said at the beginning, this is becoming, in the middle of this pandemic, having a functional website and a website that you can sell from, so a sales platform, is becoming more and more crucial. Lots of the businesses possibly that are struggling today because they've had to shut down might not have been struggling so much had they had a website that they could simply have sold from. And this is not just during this pandemic either. Now, we have had fires and floods and all sorts of things in Australia where businesses that are online simply kept trading because they were trading online. So this is really crucial. Now, if you've got any questions that you want to ask Doug or Ray, if you've got any suggestions or things that you would like to know about, please send us an email. The address is on the bottom of the screen. It's feedback@ptvchannelo.com. And in the email address, that is an O, not a zero, so ptvchannelo.com. You can go to our website, you can go to our contact page and send us a request on our contact form. Don't forget that if you missed a session, especially in this coronavirus series, you can always go back to our video on demand and you can see any of the shows all the way back for the last couple of years, in fact. And so you can keep up with what's going on. Be sure to watch our other shows that are coming up. We've got other things coming up during the year as the coronavirus dissipates a little. Some of our shows have been cancelled because we can't run live events, we can't run sport, But there are other things coming up, and make sure you keep your eye out for that, because we've got some pretty interesting things coming up later in the year. This has been Barry for Switched On IT on PTV Channel O. We'll see you again next week.